Good afternoon and welcome to the brand new risk management webinar series. This is the third in the 4-series events that we'll be holding in conjunction with Houston International Insurance Group and Crane and Rigging Hotline. My name is Katie Parrish, Editorial Director of MCM Group, publisher of Crane and Rigging Hotline, and your host for today's conference. So why focus on risk management? For starters, it's a topic that affects all areas of your business and requires planning ahead to ensure your business is covered from every angle. With this series, Crane and Rigging Hotline and HIIG have developed a range of topics that help you prepare for foreseen risks, estimate their impact, and define responses to these issues. Additionally, this webinar series will help you establish a plan and a risk strategy that includes avoiding, controlling and mitigating, accepting, and transferring risk. Today's topic will focus on quality control elements for effective accident management. In this webinar, Kevin Cunningham, President of HIIG Construction, will provide ways to protect your interest after an accident. Joining him today is Jim Weethorn, Principal Engineer for HIIG Engineering. A little bit about our speaker. Kevin has 30 years of experience in heavy industrial insurance and risk management, formerly working as a Lloyd's of London cover holder underwriter and Crane Insurance Program Manager on behalf of Lexington Insurance Company, Travelers Insurance Company, and National Interstate Insurance Company. Today he's President of HIIG Construction, a division of Houston International Insurance Group, where he's responsible for all business development and overall risk management services for crane, pile driving, foundation, and related heavy civil construction segments. HIIG Engineering, Houston, Texas, specializes in construction-related failure analysis, and in particular crane accidents. Jim Weethorn has completed studies of more than 700 crane accidents over the last 25 years. He serves on the ASME B30 main committee as well as subcommittees for tower cranes and self-erecting tower cranes. If you have questions for our speakers today about the presentation or general insurance questions, Kevin's contact information has been included on this screen, and it will be available again at the end of this presentation. A little bit about HIIG. Houston International Insurance Group is an international insurance carrier that operates 4 wholly owned major insurance companies, underwriting in more than 30 countries worldwide. Earlier this year, HIIG reorganized its domestic underwriting operations to better serve the industry's needs. For more information, visit HIIG's website at www.hiig.com or contact Kevin, who can specifically help you with heavy industrial insurance and risk management. Before we start our presentation, I just want to thank you again for attending and apologize for the change in time. If you have a question during the presentation, please type them into the chat box on your screen, which is detailed right here. We'll do a Q&A at the end of the presentation. Additionally, this presentation is being recorded and can be accessed on the Maximum Capacity Media YouTube channel at youtube.com/maxcapmedia.com, or Crane and Rigging Hotline's website, www.cranehotline.com. Now I'd like to pass the controls over to our presenters. And Kevin, you can begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Katie. You're going to give me control so we can move this thing?
There we go.
All right. Thank you. I've got a little bit of technical stuff going on. What do I do? Okay, great. Thanks. All right, we've got a lot of information to cover. Good afternoon, and thank you for your participation today and for your flexibility in rescheduling from yesterday due to our snowmageddon that happened in Atlanta. So to get started, we do have a lot of information we want to share with you today about protecting your interests after an accident occurs with certain quality control suggestions. Let me jump right to the overview. So let's start off on this overview, page 2. First point is to recognize that the construction economy is growing. And by week, it seems to be growing significantly. And that can equate to many new hires on your job sites. And we will show you later in this presentation how new hires are more prone to accidents than seasoned workers. Also, we'll discuss how contract management plays a key role in responsibilities for accidents, even when you're not at fault. And the next issue will be the quality control discussion item about establishing a rapid response plan and the certain elements that have proven to be successful in our experience over the years with crane companies that have established effective rapid response programs. Then we'll discuss how various accident investigation protocols can protect your interests, including some key suggestions from Jim Weethorn of HIIG Engineering, who is a foremost authority in crane and crane accident expert. After Jim's initial discussion about some preliminary investigation tips, we'll cover a few key points on expanded investigation, and then turn it back over to Jim, who can share some actual case studies that will open your eyes to how establishing certain quality control protocols in your investigations can greatly protect your interest in the future. And before we conclude, we will touch on a few key elements to consider when removing damaged cranes and equipment to help avoid additional injury and in addition to the original accident. So let's start with Section 2, page 3 on the state of the current construction marketplace. All right. Before we get into any statistical detail here, there is a common rule of thumb in our experience that more accidents will and have occurred from newbies than from established workers who have years of experience in your organization. It's a pretty basic fact, but one to keep in mind from a quality control standpoint. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, construction fatalities are on the rise. There were 775 in 2012, which is a little over 5% more than the previous year. And falls from heights and contact with equipment were the most common causes of construction fatalities. Now, since crane works involve more construction trades than other industry groups, and there are many new hires being hired in all different trades, many hires equate to many more accidents. So having an established pre-hire orientation and ongoing safety awareness training for the newbies is a critical quality control element to protect your interests when accidents occur. The next slide will show how new hires contribute significantly more than workers on the job for 5 years or more. Take a look at the top graph. This is a report from the Occupation and Environment Medicine Department of the Canadian government, and it's pretty obvious. First-time claim rates per 100 full-time equivalents is dramatically increased in comparison to workers who have been on the job at 13 months or higher. You just look at the left-hand column, it's a dramatic reduction. It seems to level off after being on the job between that 3 months and 13-month window. And a secondary report, the next illustration from the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the U.S. shows an alarmingly higher injury rate, actually 48,640 with workers with less than 5 years, to only 22,610 injury case study data for those over 5 years. I mean, I'm not going to get caught up in too much technical detail, but that's over a 200% increase from the newbies versus established workers. So it's something to watch out for as the economy grows and your companies grow. Now let's get into contract management. There's a handful of bullets here that are critical. They're critical elements. We consider them quality controls. We work with several producers around the country to establish quality controls because it's been proven how you contract with your customers will have a direct impact on your company when accidents go to litigation. Most accidents in the 20 years I've been underwriting crane business, most major accidents will go to litigation, and your contract will have a key role. And it continually gets more complicated. It used to be equipment rental agreements and maybe a job ticket. Today we've got subcontract agreements and master service agreements, equipment rental agreements, job tickets. All of them can impact your ability to mitigate risk if you take some necessary steps. And amending any job site contract agreement is a continual evolving process, part of which we talked about in the last webinar workshop was the constantly changing geographic environment as it relates to indemnification and anti-indemnification. So it's a never-ending changing process, and that isn't all bad. That goes to the next point on the slide. In our experience, we've seen, and we work with various trade groups around the country, and we hear it continually, that project owners and general contractors are not opposed to crane companies or other subcontractors making contract modifications, but the extent of the modification is the quality control variable that can make a difference to protect your interests. Additional insured requirements, which is a subset of your subcontract agreement, can really make or break your ability to protect your interests, irregardless of who's at fault. Particularly today with newly updated ANSI standards, ASME B30 changes, new OSHA regs, which are a basis for responsibility, and it takes a savvy insurance carrier and legal counsel to connect the dots to the new standards to make that work in your favor. The additional insured requirements can be complicated, but are the most common variable to amend from our experience. And the basic rule of thumb, if you don't try to modify, you'll never be able to create a level playing field from a quality control contract management standpoint. And since there are constant modifications to payment, retainage, and rates, and all the different things you do when you bid your work, having an understanding of insurance, indemnification, and additional insured requirements is critical. It's a critical quality control element. Your insurance agent, key part of this process. Actually, probably the most helpful asset from an insurance underwriting standpoint, from a carrier standpoint where we sit, to have insurance agents that understand crane works and understand all the various trades that will have access to or work in and around cranes to provide modification suggestions for you to use with your project owners, general contractors, etc. There are several. We did have someone who was in the article that this webinar is on. Rick Emery from Emery & Kerrigan is a very seasoned crane industry producer. There are a handful of others around the country very much like Rick that spend a lot of their time helping their insured crane customers with modifications as it relates to additional insured requirements and indemnification requirements. Fred Dawson from McGriff and Jeff Haynes from USI, and there's a list of guys that have specialized in the crane insurance industry, and we see a dramatic difference in their business from others who don't do that, and rates and coverages afforded apply accordingly. So managing your contractual liability really boils down to limiting the overbearing additional insured status. You'll see that, as you know better than us, general contractors deploy legal counsel to set up their subcontract agreements, MSAs, equipment rental agreements, and such, but they are meant to be modified. They throw everything in the kitchen sink in, and those that do attempt do get some relief and that relief is needed, particularly when you're not at fault in an accident, and you can bring forensic experts in to prove you're not at fault. But if you sign away your agreement, including overbearing additional insured offerings to the general contractors, not being at fault will have little impact to protect your interests. So if we take a look at it, how you start your business, how you hire new employees, how you affect pre-hire orientation and ongoing new hire safety training, and then subsequently how you contract your work as you're bidding are the beginning three elements. The next element that is critical from our experience in underwriting crane risk is establishing a rapid response plan. So we're hoping you can recognize that communicating a clearly defined rapid response plan with every single worker that you employ is absolutely critical, and from what we've seen, it needs to be an ongoing process. Just as indemnification and anti-indemnification rules are changing, states are modifying, it's an ever-changing dynamic process. Same principle applies from a quality control standpoint in hiring and training and retraining your workers. And simple message at this point is establish a rapid response plan. Make it clearly known to everyone, and every new hire on a job, it needs to be reinforced to them. The logical starting point with any protocol that really is a management function is to start with the owners and superintendents. And really, the critical aspect is to establish an ongoing clarification to each employee. And as every new job starts, reinforce those same principles of your rapid response plan. A couple of key items embedded in a rapid response plan that we have seen effective in the crane industry is that first priority when it occurs, when a major crane accident occurs, is for someone in a management, superintendent, foreman role to assess all potential immediate dangers to workers, your own and others, and any affected structures. And the concept there is to see if they're secure before people start moving equipment or people are trying to get in and rescue people before taking the next steps. Another next step is to prepare to communicate to the rescue personnel when they arrive as to any imminent crane-related equipment dangers. Many don't know. Many are very seasoned, but many don't know. If they're firemen and emergency response people, they come into a crane site. But the whole point is if they don't know the inner workings of what could happen, there could be additional dangers and additional accidents on top of the original occurrence. Next key item is to establish legal counsel relations in a collaborative effort with your insurance carrier. Got to get beyond the words here. This is a real deal. This is a make or break part of quality control and accident management from our 20 years of doing it. By establishing legal counsel relations in advance of your work, when you renew your coverage, that your expectations are you will use local counsel to protect your interests, and local counsel that is seasoned and experienced in the crane business, you will be in a position to protect your interests much better than if you don't make the effort at all. Time is of the essence. Another basic assumption is truly the guiding principle. Concept being engage counsel or some legal representative along with your insurance carrier as you begin to prepare for your preliminary investigation. You'll see throughout today's discussion we break it up, and we recommend that you break it up. There is very different elements to a preliminary investigation versus the expanded investigation. some expanded investigations go on for days, weeks, and months. And the preliminary is a very time sensitive, so time is of the essence in the preliminary. And again, one of the basic outcomes of engaging or establishing legal counsel relations with your insurer is to protect your attorney-client work product privileges, particularly with the other items we discussed earlier. When there is contract modifications and there is additional insured obligations going to certain higher tier contractors, all of that needs to be known and protected by your attorney-client privilege as you begin the exit investigation, because finding the smoking gun could turn back on you based on some of the overbearing additional insured, and so knowing it in advance will help your counsel guide the investigation process. A key element that you'll hear a lot of today in the subsequent sections is retaining the most qualified crane industry forensic experts possible. Again, that is even before the next item of contracting local authorities. And there's a foot race. As you see up on the slide, the bullet says before other parties do, and that's a real-life situation. Jim Weethorn can speak to that. When cranes go over anywhere in the country, anywhere in North America, I've known Jim for a lot of years, and his phone will just start ringing from all sides. Plaintiff, injured parties, crane companies, general contractors. So if you want to use the best and you can convince your insurer to engage legal counsel who will formally retain the experts, and you want to work with the best, it has to be done immediately, otherwise you'll lose out. Contacting the authorities is a critical element, and it's really to protect your interests. It's a good faith play with local building departments and OSHA that you're reaching out to them as is the perceived obligation. You're telling them you're doing it, but you're getting your guns loaded prior to it. You get to legal, you get to your insurance, you get to your experts, and then you bring these guys in. And those three sources can help with the authorities, the building departments, and the OSHAs. Next couple of steps, pretty basic assumptions to prevent non-essential personnel from the accident scene access. That's pretty basic. You have a right to put up the yellow tape, to bring additional people in, and to not let people walk around that accident scene. And if you get pushback on any of that from the general contractors or local authorities, there's where you engage counsel that if it's done right, local counsel can be boots on the ground with you at those accident scenes to protect your interests. Next common assumption is to interview witnesses. Your own employees and others, certainly your own employees are more amenable to talking with you. Others are not, and they most certainly are not well after the fact. And oddly enough, the circumstances of major accidents can change by the hour and by the day, so getting to any witnesses early on, capturing basic intel, not looking for smoking gun causation, just the facts. What did you see? What did you hear? What happened in their mind? And capture as much of that detail as you can. Many people, when we've talked about this topic, assume this is all the insurance company's responsibility. Certainly, us as insurers want that information. We pride ourselves in engaging the likes of Jim Weethorn and counsel on all severity accidents. But I ask you to consider something. This is your company. These are your people. It is your right to do the investigation. And you are present. You've got people there on the site. So if you had in a clearly defined rapid response plan, a basic question and answer format from a foreman to any onlookers, any of your workers or any other workers, just to capture some core information, the who, what, and where, and the contact information will be extremely valuable later on down the road as typical accidents turn into litigated files, and that could go on for a couple of years. Last point on establishing a rapid response plan is be prepared for something that is almost as bad as the lawyers coming out of the woodwork, and that is the media. The next two slides you'll see are some examples. We won't go through all this narrative. You'll have it in your PowerPoint. This is directly out of a book written by Janine Reed, who has since retired, but a few years back was considered the foremost authority in crisis management in construction. Written several books and a keynote speaker at several events. I was fortunate to speak with her at a couple of crane industry events, and she put together some really good information. Identifying the company audience as being a bullet point. Appointing a media spokesperson doesn't sound very much like construction type stuff, but it's critical. If your company doesn't understand that the media can really make or break your ability to mitigate circumstances, negative circumstances, as typical outcome of a crane accident, you've got to rethink that thought process, because the media can spin it and damage your reputation and your customer relations as much or more so than any of the legal issues. You'll see in here, delivering a by-time statement, it's some of the basic facts that this expert has said can be critically important to you. Instead of just giving them general eyewash, which the media will make an issue of, being succinct on, you have a very well-established safety program, stating some facts on it. You're doing the investigation, putting some time frames on it, and trying to be relatively specific, yet pretty basic in your actual communications to them, will help you out in the long run. Delivering any additional statements can be a cause for concern and trouble. So if your people, as part of your rapid response plan, can get their thoughts together on any job, assuming the worst, if it goes down, capture just a few items, communicate how your company is responding, advise when the next update will be available, showing courtesy to the media so that they don't crucify you in their subsequent interviews. Being prepared, critical thing. And then the crisis aftermath, keeping lines of communications, this is more internally with your employees and any other audiences, OSHA, building departments, is also a very valuable item for you to consider. All right, let's get into some of the meat of this here. Preliminary investigation, I'm going to talk about these couple of points and then turn it over to the real expert. Your insurance company and agent should agree to a clearly defined strategy to immediately engage local counsel and forensic accident investigation specialists when accidents occur. That should happen in your insurance renewal negotiations. I can tell you from personal experience, it is as critical as the rates and forms of coverage they give you, because it's all about when it goes boom in the night or a crane goes over, that's when you need the insurance. That is as critical as a rate or a form or unique coverage for your company. Recognizing that rapid deployment of legal and forensic experts is actually contrary to the duty to defend insurance provision. There is insurance provisions in all policies. It's in the third page of any policy jacket. You'll see a duty to defend provision. It is very clear. The traditional model doesn't sit very well, doesn't fit very well in shock loss industries such as the crane business. And all that means, without getting into all the insurance vernacular, is all of us on the insurance company side promise a duty contractually. We promise a duty to defend the insured policyholder when they are sued, when there is damages brought against them. And plaintiff counsel is more aware of this than any of us, and they recognize it. They're at a site, that's where the ambulance chasing vernacular came about. They're there before any traditional insurance response is engaged. Because you haven't been sued yet, the crane is still laying on its side, cleaning up the mess and protecting people and property damage before there's any kind of claim filed and certainly any lawsuit. So the typical insurance policy has a duty to defend provision, and too many insurers hide behind it. Haven't been sued yet, don't have any duty to incur expense and hire experts and lawyers. They really don't even have a claim yet. It's a pretty obvious fault in the insurance industry, and it takes your agent to find insurers that recognize we're not going to you should not allow your insurer to hide behind the duty to defend, because all the accident scene facts will be gone by the time the claim is filed or the lawsuit is issued against your company. So the traditional insurance company approach is to await the summons and complaint documents to engage legal and forensic. Horses out of the barn. You've got to get past that and get your experts set up at the point of renewal before you even go to work and before any accidents could occur. Now we want to turn it over to Jim Wheathorn, and he'll talk to you about forensic engineering and how this can help crane accident management.
Okay,
Jim?
Thank you, Kevin. Just to go a little bit deeper into this, what we often refer to as a team, it's not a simple process. We work hand in hand with insurance companies, with general contractors, with different risk managers to make sure, and I lost my screen. Is that...
Your screen go off?
Yeah, my screen went off.
Nancy or Katie, can you help? An internal
it's
thing.
okay with me.
Yeah, it's still up on ours, Jim. It has your forensic engineer and then have crane specialist pre-selected.
Well, what I'll do, I'll just go over to the one that I had before here. I think I've got. Anyway, now it's back up.
Ours went down. Yeah, we're good. We're good.
All right. Well, I'll keep going. And what is so important is that all of these individuals, from the attorneys to the engineers to any adjusters that may be out there, and to the insureds, the owners that are out on the site, that we're all familiar with each other. I realized early on that crane accidents would come in, that it was in areas a little bit outside my expertise, such as controls and from metallurgical issues and so forth. And so what we did was assemble a team. I have 6 engineers that can cover every known aspect of an accident of any type of heavy equipment, but primarily cranes, from hydraulics controls, downloading LMI information, rigging issues, dealing with operational issues, structural, wind, and metallurgical. And so our team is set here. We can handle anything. That's why a lot of times, too, we want some good information early on that allows us to assign and send out the proper person. Because if it's a control issue, controls within the operation of the crane, and I go out there, that's outside of what I'm really good at. So I've just wasted the time going there and coming back. I want the right person out there to begin with. But we want to be right up there at the front of the list. To be able to preserve that evidence, you've got to get there quick. Often we establish groups that have a pecking order, that when the initial claim is called in to, for instance, Rick, that I will get a call at the same time, if not before, he calls the insurance company, so I can start talking with the person out in the field, getting information, talking to that person about what I need for him to do, and make sure that he follows certain procedures. And then in the meantime, also the legal team is assembled and is brought in. Now, as part of this, most of the companies I work with, and also independent contractors, I'll just give an example of one major contractor here in the U.S. Every 2 years, my team meets with about 600 of their supervisors, and we go over the latest standards, and we get on one-on-one to tell them what you are going to be held accountable for. And so they know who we are, they can see us, they're familiar with us, and that then go over the procedures that need to be done, because no matter what everybody says, it's not if, it's when an accident is going to occur. When I get that initial conversation with the person out in the field, I'm going over photographic evidence is probably one of the main things that I tell him first of all. To how to take photographs, where do I want them, what overviews do I want. I want everything documented as soon as possible before anybody really starts arriving. And this is being done in conjunction with any type of emergency activities, trying to get assist people getting out. There's one person assigned to me that I can work with. And also I want to get his initial thoughts. What did he hear? What did that person see? And so to assure that we get the right person out there on the job and as quick as possible. Our rule is 24 hours. We want to be there within 24 hours, no more than 48. Because on crane sites and crane accidents, you have schedules that have to be kept, and I know this is similar in a lot of industries. They want to get back in production. They want to get going. They start moving things. They start throwing things in trash cans and dumpsters. All of that information could be critical, and we want to make certain that is preserved and preferably not touched. Don't move it. Don't kick it to the side. Leave everything as is. Field personnel also, we want them to immediately develop a list of all the employees, potential witnesses that were out there, so to help both our team and the legal team when they get out there to be ready to go. And then a lot of attorneys are different, and this is once again why we have a training seminar with attorneys that want to do crane accidents. We get them up to date. We have Cranes 101, Tower Cranes 101, and different risk assessment for managers out in the field. So what they need to do, what they need to watch for, things of that nature. We want the legal team, the engineering team, the insurance team, the owner, everybody to speak the same language. And this becomes even more critical when we get into, let's say, in a deposition stage, that an attorney has the capability to understand an answer in a possible deposition is incorrect from a standard standpoint, let's say, or from just general knowledge of duties and responsibilities on the site. So we want everyone to be well-versed in that particular end. An issue that comes up quite often is drug testing. Did you or did you not? Well, I can tell you it's pretty well, it is required. You better get it done. It's very difficult for people to explain away why a drug test was not done for your operator or for anyone that was directly involved in the incident itself. Okay, go with the next slide. And obviously in any forensic analysis, you want to capture everything. You want everything that we can get a hold of and document where it's located is key. We have certain, depending on the type of the accident, if it's an overturn, a buckle boom, rigging failure. We have certain procedures and protocols that we follow and steps that we go through. For instance, when I have an overturn, I want to know where's the ball. And sounds silly, but when it goes over, the headache ball or the block that's on the end goes in a certain direction, and sometimes it comes off, sometimes it doesn't. And it gives us a lot of information and insight as to the method and the means by which the boom collapsed. This becomes very critical. It was very critical in a case up in New York, that we need to know those certain items where they're located. As far as a lot of the new computers or the new systems on cranes have LMIs, load moment indicators, and they also have data recorders. Now, very few, if any, crane manufacturers today do not have, and I said do not have, a data recorder, or what's referred to as a black box in a crane. Now, you may not pay for it, but it's there for their protection. If you buy one, all you're doing is buying the rights to get the data out. Our team, we have the capabilities and the equipment to download that information. Most of those systems today have a 30-day recordable period. So for a 30-day, 8 hours a day, it will be recording, and then once 30 days is over, it starts writing over itself. Older cranes, late 90s, you can lose that data by starting the crane, by disconnecting the battery. That used to be one of the old things. You disconnect the battery, it loses all its data. And now it's a permanent recorder. So it's directly related to the type of equipment that's involved in the incident as well. At some point, we team up and meet out the site with the attorney, and each of us has our own jobs that we're looking at. Due to preservation of evidence and also for privileged information, we, as the engineers, normally do not take the witness statements because that is part of our file. That the legal team will do that, and so we'll remain privileged, so that we, but at the same time, we get a verbal response as to issues that did occur out at the site. The other issue that comes in that will be demanded immediately is all the maintenance records. We go in great detail in a lot of our training programs of maintaining all of the repairs that you do on that crane, maintain your inspections, not necessarily your daily, but most definitely your annuals. We recommend the life of the crane. If you do, you have to do annual inspection, and it's best to keep those for the life of the crane. That's part of your permanent record. You keep them in there. Another thing is going to be the qualifications of the operator. It is getting to the point more and more that it is required that and I just lost it again. It is required that all operators be certified by some type of national organization. Now, currently, well, originally OSHA required that all of them would have to be, all operators would have to be certified by November 10th, 2014. As a result of quite a number of conflicts and some issues that the National Commission of the Certification of Crane Operators had with the new OSHA 1400 series, that was changed to 2017. But on 2017, if you have a crane and that operator isn't certified, you've got problems. And so it is very critical that those be kept up to date. I'm running into a big problem in manufacturing right now. I've completed, as of December 31st, 2013, 716 crane accidents, both nationally and internationally. And a big part of the accidents are in manufacturing, where you have overhead cranes. A lot of times they do that training internally. They may have 10, 20, 30 different operators that they say are quote-unquote qualified or certified, but yet they've gone through no program. And in reality, what the situation often results in, the first one that gets there and picks up the box is the operator for that day. And so it is very critical that a lot of that data be brought forward, be documented, make sure that you follow the national guidelines and get those operators in the proper certification process. The team from the engineers, what we like to recommend to clients, because this is what we follow, it is good to have people that are if they're going to handle your investigation, they're going to handle preparing a report and potentially testifying either in deposition or trial. They should be qualified in a number of areas. Number one, they should have practical experience. They should have been out in the field. They should have run a crane or be involved with cranes, owned cranes, operated cranes. Number two, they should have some technical background. Do you have the basics to understand designs of these cranes? So in reality, that kind of narrows the list down to engineers. And then finally, we feel it's important that those experts have a very defined role in national standards. Are you on committees? Do you help write those standards? Do you understand those standards? Because there's nothing better for me to get a question about a certain standard and they said, well, how do you know that? And I said, well, I wrote it. So it makes it very strong. Your position is stronger. And so we often run up against experts that were a crane operator for 10 years. They start going down wrong directions, and invariably a lot of our work is dispelling things that aren't accurate. So you have to have that broad base. Also, with working with attorneys, we have found it so critical by having, and when I'm using the term educated attorneys from the standpoint educated in the cranes, that they understand those standards. They've gone through, let's say, our training program. They understand what questions to ask. We have found also by being involved very early on, a lot of times we can prepare and assist in the questions at time of deposition, where we will get and seek out an answer to one or two specific items that are critical to the long-range cause of the accident, where if a person agrees, yes, if A happened, then B would have to happen, we get it nailed down early, and it strengthens your case as the time goes along. So it's very much a team effort. Now, one of the things that we really have started over the last, I'd say since about 2008 or 2007 is when we really started implementing this, is the use of 3D laser scanners. The first time I really used it was in 2006 at the time of the Hoover Dam, the Colorado River bypass cableway collapse at Hoover Dam. There we used a LiDAR. You have debris, you have evidence scattered over 2 states on mountainsides. It would take months to document all that. What we did was we used what's called LiDAR, L-I-D-A-R, put it in an airplane. We flew over the site, and we scanned the entire site. That took about 6 hours. Now, flying it isn't as accurate. You're probably within a couple inches, whereas when you use a more line of sight and the new light type of lasers, those can be in accuracy about a 1/16 of an inch in 600 feet. And what this does is completely capture the entire scene. It tells you where every piece is, the direction that it's laying, but more importantly is geometry. We are putting together a study which we're going to be basically presenting at ConExpo and then offering it up, the completed study on all our crane accidents. And what we have found, geometry, about 70% of our accidents can be proven or disproven solely by geometry. And so if we have dimensions, and I scan mine in and a guy uses a stick, somebody uses a tape, human error gets involved, and you get a couple foot error, which happens all the time, the accuracy that you get from a laser scanner just can't be beat, period. Case closed. I'm finding it even more important when I'm developing animations, recreations, where you often get challenged as, well, what about that dimension? What did you do here? What did you do there? How did you measure that? With the laser scanner, once it's scanned in, you convert it to a CAD drawing. It is a full scaled, accurate drawing, and also then we have the exact piece of equipment there, exactly where it is, all the components around it are there, and so when you reenact an accident, you're actually using actual components that were captured at the scene. And it is significantly better quality and more accuracy than attempting to go back, hand measure, draw up each little piece from drawings, and try to recreate it. Kevin had indicated about being called early. I get a number of calls. I know the first tower crane in New York, I had 9 different calls starting 20 minutes after the accident into the next day. So it is by having teams established early on, you eliminate a lot of the potential of getting conflicted out, or you want to use somebody but they're already taken. Put your team together. Have them ready to go. Excuse me. And I might add one other thing with laser scanning. We had one particular project where it was a death involved. We couldn't get into the scene, but we could scan it from outside the yellow tape. We were able to establish exactly the impact point of the boom, document exactly how much wire rope was on the drum so that we could reconfigure, get the boom angle and the lifting angle. And the question came in because the operator was taking the crane down wrong. He had not set the block down. But the question was, at the time that it went over, was it because of the operation or was it because of the wind? Because from an insurance perspective, there was a different approach to it. And got the call on Thursday. We're there on Friday. We scanned it on Saturday. I got the data on Sunday, ran the numbers on Monday, and on Tuesday morning, I called the client and told him 24.6 miles an hour, and it was wind, not the operation. Not the first person had been inside the tape yet, but we had all the data that we need. Everything was captured, and we were light years ahead of anyone else that was out there, and it was permanently documented. So the tool, as you can tell, I am just a big advocate of it. And most of my clients, we establish if there's a death, we definitely would scan the site. There's certain parameters. We set a protocol. So all of that is part of your initial gathering and discussion with your team members, trying to get them all on the same page and everybody understands their roles and what they need to do. So, Kevin, I think that's it.
That's great. Nice job, Jim. Glad you're on the team. All right, we're running a little bit short. We're right at 50 minutes, so we want to try to keep this under an hour. Let's go into the next slide. Would be page 12, and we want to talk briefly about crane disassembly and moving. Basic principle here is removing your crane from an accident site can really be one of the most arduous parts of an accident scene. All the damage is done, the investigators, the media, all that stuff has gone on. Finally, it's time to clean it up, and we've experienced multiple additional accidents when trying to remove the equipment and to get it into either repair or total it and sell it for parts or whatever. But we want to keep in mind that it's not over until it's really over. So the key point to recognize is that there are significant additional injury hazards in removing damaged cranes. And how do we avoid it? In our world, we would engage one of Jim's engineers. And we need a professional engineer, And right out of the gates, it's pretty basic geometry, as he indicated. Engineers would calculate the proper center of gravity. Seems like a pretty basic assumption that anybody could do. It's not, particularly when you're considering the peculiar rigging applications that are needed. Most times, rigging applications being welded right to the damaged or bent booms and jibs, because they will slip. They weren't designed to be lifted or moved, in a damaged state. So, so the whole concept of operating the crane has peculiar weights and dynamics and rigging applications needed. So it ain't over till it's over. Pretty basic assumption as well is watching out for counterweight imbalances. And the solution from what we've seen with help from Jim and other crane industry experts is to oversize your assist cranes. You don't go with the common assumptions of load-bearing capabilities. You typically go oversized to a pretty significant degree. And what you're trying to do is avoid sudden shock load in the uprighting. It really is a delicate process when you think of all the heavy iron and tough industry exposures, but this really represents a delicate process in the disassembly of bent booms and jibs. So these couple of key points are part of our quality controls when accidents occur in the crane market. So, in conclusion, this is speaking to age, but over 20 years of underwriting the crane industry, we found the typical crane owner and company personnel are very methodical and very caring employers. And we only bring that up, not to be corny, but that if you can take the same methodical and caring approach in establishing certain quality controls, maybe some of these suggestions can help you for your accident management protocols. It is our belief, it has been our experience that these quality controls can greatly assist you if you happen to have a major crane accident in your company. And these suggestions are truly, they're just fundamental steps to take when it happens. And we thank you for the opportunity to share our ideas with you today, and look forward to any discussions or questions you may have. And Katie, that'll do it. We can go to any Q&A that might be out there. Thank you.
Okay, great. Excellent job, guys. I learned a lot, and I hope you all did too. The laser scanning is something new to me, and I'm really interested in hearing more about that. Couple of questions for you. First, the rapid response plan. I know that HIIG has a package that you all put together. Is there a document or tip sheets available that can be handed out for the rapid response plan, something quick that people can refer to?
We have, this is Jim, but we do have kind of an outline of things that need to be done, and then that goes into a lot more detail than what we talked about today. And then from that, you pick your team members. You establish your attorneys and so forth. But yes, we do have a general outline of what we recommend.
Is that available anywhere online, a download? Or?
It is not online. I should probably, I would let me dig that up, and I can provide that to you.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
One question we have is, you point out that you should do your own investigation, including interviewing witnesses and taking photos. And my question before you went into the 3D scanning was, how important is it to take measurements for your own files? And while you are doing some scanning of the site and some photos, really, realistically, going out there with a tape measure, is that still important?
It still is to some degree. We always establish when we scan documented measurements. We may stick a surveyor's rod up that, you can go up there, because if I go to trial, the first thing I do, I go up and say, all right, see, this is a survey rod. This is 2 feet right here. And then I go over and I can show where it's 2 feet there according to our measurement, and that the scan proves that it's the same as what the survey rod is. So we like to have basically some type of monument in there that is recordable, that we can back check and prove that the scan is accurate as well.
Okay.
Good stuff. Hey, Katie, let me add to that. The reasoning behind and what goes into the information we put out and work with, with Jim, his team, and attorneys. The reasoning behind a preliminary investigation versus an expanded investigation is right to the point we brought up, because many crane companies are blue-collar driven. They don't know, and nor should they know, or be involved with forensic investigations, and that's not what the preliminary is about. It's really just identifying, making a list of who was there, contacts, and basic facts, and basic pictures until the experts, like Jim or any of his engineers, can get there. Because even in that 24-hour window, there could be some evidence captured that can support a litigation containment theory that would be lost in a 24-hour window.
I see.
Your guys are there. Your foreman knows the people that were present. They tend to be more amenable to at least give some basic information, as opposed to when any attorneys or formal investigators get there for the expanded. So would strongly encourage any ongoing dialogue, questions, or individual emails in that regard from anybody that might have a concern about their own blue-collar workforce being connected to that preliminary investigation piece. But it's critically important.
Okay. Should you develop a relationship with forensic accident investigation specialists or legal counsel before an accident occurs and have that relationship built up, or what are suggestions there?
Well, my answer is absolutely. Because when it happens at 2 a.m., you can't call somebody and say, all right, let's put a team together.
Right.
You need to get on it right then. And that's why we're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We establish and exchange cell phone numbers. There is no time frame. You don't call us after 6 o'clock type of deal. When it happens, it happens. And the team's got to be ready. And you need to be familiar with each other.
Good point. Katie, from where the question is emanating from, but ideally, from our perspective, is the insurance renewal process, which is not a positive thing for crane companies or heavy constructors to go through. It's actually relatively negative. They hate doing it. They got to put together updated data, and all they get is bad news and rates and costs. This is the differential. This is the different part. Putting that team together via the crane owner, crane company's agent, local counsel that can validate experience and know-how in cranes, and then a connection via their carrier to a Jim Weethorn or to a Jim Weethorn HIIG type organization. As a condition of their renewal is absolutely critical. It doesn't exist in the normal way. I think that's why these key agents around the country have had such success in their regions of dominating their crane clientele, is because in our business, in crane insurance, it isn't a frequency-driven risk the way insuring a carpenter or plumber might be. It is a severity-driven risk, and without that preparation, which is what this whole quality control thing in advance was about, is get it done in advance. Not only get it done and set up, then communicate it to their employees and to all new hires as a recurring quality control management element of their company. And those guys win. Those guys that do that prevail and have leveled the playing field against plaintiff attorneys and other influences that have dominated the crane insurance marketplace. Because it's always been crane goes down, crane pays, even though crane owner, the crane operator might not have had the actual true fault in the circumstance.
Okay. You know, one thing I may add, for instance, Rick, he puts on open seminars, like 2 or 3 days, for all his current clients and any potential clients, and it includes everything, basically what we've talked about today. And I know Kevin does the same thing. That you know, how to have your tickets worded, the contracts worded. Then we come in and talk about the standards, about accidents, how to handle them, and then the legal comes in. And so you get a little familiarity with each other, and can start, you know who's going to be there, what their background is, and so forth. And so those are available on quite a few locations.
Okay. If anyone's interested in that, Kevin's information is up on the screen if you're interested in doing some sort of course like that. I'm sure he can put you in contact with the person that could do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That he can.
Great.
I'll answer for him.
Kevin, this goes back to your last presentation, and if anyone has any other questions, please send them in. We're going to wrap up shortly, but I want to make sure that everyone's questions get answered. Last time you spoke about multiple employer doctrine, and this attendee said he had never heard of that, so his question is, if a fatality occurs before 1926.1423 came out, what standard would OSHA hold the contractor accountable to?
Good point. Very good question. Before the, well, let me preface it. The multi-employer doctrine has been around
long time
as a legal premise even longer than OSHA has created their rules of law. And OSHA has always had some indirect reference to multi-employer doctrine. It has become much more meaningful with the new OSHA standard, OSHA crane standards, principally in possible causation theories, in a couple of major killer exposures, for lack of a better word, and that is faulty ground conditions and power line hazards. Both of those two were in the top, at least they were in the top 5 causes of severity accidents and crane-related fatalities over a 10-year study that we did with OSHA before the new standard came about. And so it re-engaged the multi-employer doctrine, because what it's saying is, and the CDAC committee deserves the credit because it was heavily debated, principally because part of that CDAC committee had general contractor representatives and others are on that side of it. They didn't want any part of these regulations, and they didn't win that battle, which was very, very good for the crane industry. And the principal rule of thumb that connects to the multi-employer doctrine also connects to a couple of other legal premises, and that is controlling entity within a multi-employer doctrine, and ground conditions if it were a crane tip over, or ground conditions and power lines if it's a tip over that happens to go into a power line. So the point is, it was kind of an old dormant doctrine that really was not used, because if we look at the standard prior to these recent changes by OSHA, it didn't matter. If the crane was involved in a fatality or a severity accident, the crane owner was cited and fined, because the rule basically stated that if the crane should have been able to stop the lift or stop the move or whatever. And now today they've leveled it to a degree, saying that there are multiple other parties involved with preparing the ground, especially on the big complex projects that have 500-ton and larger lifts going on. that the ground needs to be secured, and it never was, and why would a crane owner be held responsible when in the past all they would say is they thought it was, and the crane owner should have known that the crane was tipping or was out of balance. So multi-employer doctrine, we can send it if the individual wants to send an email or follow-up. We can send some other detail and as it connects to those other parts in the controlling entity in the two ground conditions power line. But that's really where we connect.
Okay, John, if you've got a question, follow-up question, just email me or email Kevin and we'll get it taken care of for you. I'm trying to decipher this question, but maybe it makes sense to you. If a crane rental house did not properly train their employees to comply with 1926.1423, but through their inaction allowed a general industry standard to apply towards assembly and disassembly, and a fatality occurs, what risks are they exposing themselves to?
And that's before 1400?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. It doesn't say before.
I thought up front it said before. But basically, with the new 1400 series, and this is one of the things that these major contractors that we talk about, when you assemble or disassemble a crane, one person has to be designated the AD director, assembly disassembly director. When OSHA gets out there, in particular if there's fatality, first thing they're going to ask, who's the AD director? And if you say that person, you go over there, are you the AD director, and he doesn't know what you're talking about, you're in trouble. You've got to have someone that is responsible for the overall erection of that crane. Larger cranes, a lot of times it's an internal mechanic, someone that assembles and disassembles the crane all the time. They've tried to get away from being purely the operator because he has other duties to perform. But you do have to assign an AD director for every single time that you assemble and disassemble, period. And you better have it.
Okay.
I hope
John,
that answers that.
If that didn't answer your question, let me know. Okay, another question we have, referring to the be aware to not lose data when restarting the crane. What type of data is actually stored, and how can you ensure you do not lose the data?
Well, it depends directly on the age of the crane and the type of LMI you have. And LMI is the original designation of these load moment indicators. Some of them have different designations, but it's basically all the same. In the past, they used to be kind of like a hard drive that as long as it didn't lose power, it would keep it. But if you ever disconnected the battery, it would lose all of its power. Some of the older ones also had, once you turn the switch off, you would lose all the current data. Now, I'll have to preface everything. When you download data, what you get is a string of numbers. It may be 20 numbers and digits. Those are all codes. So you still have to go with the manufacturer and say, what does 12367-ZQR, all these numbers mean? And then they'll give you a response to it. And they won't just give you the list. You have to specifically ask for each one. But at least you've got it down, and usually they are the ones that will then print out, and once they're directed to, usually by court order, they will print out each step, overload, 20%, out of level. I mean, there's a multitude of different things that the recorder will issue for you. But it varies on the type and the age of the crane. New ones are all just like you have in an airplane. It's a hard disk that's continuously written on, and it gets to the end and then goes back and starts writing over again. But it's I think almost all of them are 30 days background data leading up to it.
Okay.
Yeah, good point. The reference in the original article and why we just bulleted it here was there still is so many of the older model cranes out there. And the whole idea is to connect with the distributor or manufacturer. If that crane is laying on its side and it gets uprighted, don't turn it on yet without them there,
Yes.
Especially when you've got an operator saying, I didn't do anything wrong. That was the whole premise, that you want to try to say that, and Jim just indicated, the newer cranes, it's like airplanes, it's black box, it'll be protected. But on the older ones, you just have to be aware not to turn it back on. It's a basic rule of thumb. You turn that key on after it's been upside down and off, you could lose the data. You don't want to.
Yeah, let someone that's experienced in that turn that switch, that they know the system.
Exactly.
Well, it doesn't look like we have any additional questions, so excellent job today, guys. Really appreciate your time. Thank you all for attending. We apologize again for having to delay this a day. If you have any additional questions, our contact information is on the screen, and sometimes those questions come, in the shower or late at night, so feel free to email or call if you have something else to ask. We'll have another webinar, the fourth in the series, I think in March or April, so keep your eye out. We'll be sending out some emails on that. And with that said, have a great weekend, everyone, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Jim. Great job.
Thank you, Kevin.